Welcome. We are in the midst of Stanford Ranch Gardens. And sitting beside me is the illustrious Mr. Matt Drewno, who I wholly appreciate as a human being, as a brother, and as an aspiring soul for supporting the planet, supporting each other, and becoming all we can be. So today we have the blessing to have a conversation with him in the middle of these magnificent gardens that he is integral to tending. The Stanford Ranch Inn is well known as a vegan resort, and it has been for how many years?
I think it probably has been about 40 years.
40 years.
Plus or minus a few years.
And people just keep coming. It's a place that I was just talking to Jeff, the owner, this morning. He was saying that this place has a very special energy that helped he and his wife develop a vision for what they wanted this place to be, and then it has become a magnet for drawing people from all over the country and all over the world to appreciate the care for the planet and for the body that it emanates. So in regards to Matt, he is a managing director for Stanford Ranch Inn Gardens, for Victory Gardens, which he'll share with you about, and also community gardens, the burgeoning community gardens of Fort Bragg. And then he's also associated with the home base in Willits, California, which is on the other side of the mountains from Mendocino, and we are here on the coast. What I wanted to share with you before we get started in regards to some questions is this really stood out for me in respect to who Matt is in a holistic manner. This is featured in the website for Ecology Action, which is a nonprofit organization that has been around for
almost 50 years.
50 years. Yeah. And its intention is to awaken the planet to the value of sustainable farming called Biointensive gardening. It's about integrating gardening into all of our lives, if we so choose, and if we so bless ourselves, so that as we garden and we tend the nurturing and the care and the growth and the full body potential of these plants, so inherently at the same time we also are doing the same for us. So because we're connected with the earth, we're connected with Mother Nature, which is integral to who we are, and as we connect, we grow and our lives open to possibilities and opportunities. Am I on?
Yeah, you were right on.
Okay, yeah. Thanks. So this is what Matt says in the Ecology Action website. He says, I wanted to understand what it meant to be a human being, what it takes to survive, and how to do so in a way that gives more than it takes. The idea of being a steward of the earth, working with nature, and to leave this planet better than I found it becomes a goal that I still work with today. I look at this as your mission statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's perfect.
It keeps me going.
Yeah, and so we met a few years ago. We were sitting having the best coffee. Oh, they have the best coffee here at Stanford Ranch. And we were having coffee and a vegan muffin. They also have the best muffins with the most blueberries and raspberries, just clarifying. And we were sitting there, and Matt came in, and we struck up a conversation, my wife and I, my wife Jana, and we got to know each other, and the connection continues to grow and to blossom. So thanks, buddy, for
Thank you.
for
Yeah.
our mutual growth.
Yeah, I gotta say, I haven't met very many people who are as warm, embracing, and just open. And I think your website, Boundless Gratitudes, speaks that exactly. You know, my experience of getting to know you. So
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. All right. So before I get going here, in terms of my questions, will you just give us an overview of how you are involved with the Ecology Action and how you express living a conscious purpose in being involved with Ecology Action?
Yeah, I got involved with Ecology Action about 12 years ago, and I was on a search for a type of agriculture that made sense to me, which sustainable agriculture kind of speaks to it. But
what does sustainable mean?
yeah, that's a good question, and that's why I really like Ecology Action, because their definition of sustainability in terms of agriculture, it has a lot of integrity behind it, whereas today a lot of the things that are considered sustainable or environmental or green are kind of, you really got to look at it and see the bigger picture of the total embodied energy in something, or the embodied carbon footprint, or all these things. So Ecology Action really looks at sustainability holistically and says, when we're talking about agriculture and growing plants, that we make sure we're growing soil food, first.
Mm-hmm.
And so and all the water it takes to do that, the energy it takes to do that, how can we do that in a way that gives back what we take? And so that's why I got involved with Ecology Action, because while I was on that search looking at different methods and doing different methods, I kept asking that deeper question of, does this make sense in the long term? Is it gonna? That's another aspect of sustainability. Like into the future, are we still gonna be able to use this method, or if the energy prices go too high, or how's it gonna affect agriculture? So that's one vector of many. So yeah, Ecology Action just approaches it very holistically and in a wonderful way that allows everyone to do it, and it's not just this thing that you pay someone else to do for you.
So we're all in it together.
We're all in it together.
In nurturing our food so that it bountifully nurtures us.
Yeah, and then in addition to that, Ecology Action looks at micro-scaling agriculture. In other words, growing more with less, in less area, with less water, with those kind of efficiencies, and then we can give back more to nature and restore ecologies. So it's also as much about restoring ecosystems and the biosphere and sustaining that as it is sustaining and restoring ourselves through that work. So.
Well, as I learn more about it, I just get it's about honoring ourselves, Mother Nature, our planet in balance.
Yeah. You often say it better than I do. So feel free at any time to clarify what I'm trying to say.
So, what are 1 to 3 pivotal experiences in your life which moved you to discover and thrive in your position of professional acumen and influence?
Wow, what does acumen mean?
That means your skill, your crispness, sharpness of sharing what you know
Nice.
and what you understand.
That's a great word. I like that word. Yeah, 1 to 3 experiences. Wow. I think one of them for me was I did the Camino Santiago in Spain, from one end of Spain to the other.
And that being, just for those who don't know, what?
Yeah, so it's an old pilgrimage route that historically people used a long time ago across Europe, when people used to travel to the different churches, and even before it was a pilgrimage site for the church, it was a route that the Celtic people had used, and different ancient civilizations, and it follows the Milky Way. And so when people used to kind of guide themselves by the stars and the landscape, their path, they kind of followed the Milky Way in this, and it's supposed to be a ley line as well. And it's a lot of people who do it tend to have like mystical experiences, or it's conducive to helping you answer questions or finding yourself or whatever. And yeah, so I was in architecture school, and I was graduating. I was doing a semester abroad in Italy. And before I came back to the States, I had known at that point I didn't really want to do architecture as a profession, but I loved it. I wanted to be outside and working with nature. And when I was in Italy, it was during the time of the Iraq War, the early 2000s, the second one. And I had some very strong conflict with the war that was going on, and involved in different protests with that. And I was spending every morning waking up with the sun and drinking coffee and watching the sunrise up over the Forum of the Rome Empire, and watching the sunset over it too. And this was like the center of Roman power, and I was watching my country, which has a similar center, similar architecture, going into a war that I just had a lot of conflict with, and really waking up internally to the reality of politics and war in our modern society and all these things. And I was just watching nature, the sunset and the sunrise over these ruins of the civilization that did the same thing. It was all built by slaves, and it was and nature was taking it back and swallowing it, and it was dissolving. And I knew after that, whatever trip I was going to do before I came back to the United States and finished my degree, I needed to answer some questions, find myself and what my next steps were, and so I did that trip. And after that trip, I walked for pretty much 30 days straight, about 500 miles.
Wow.
And destroyed my legs, got tendonitis. But it was quite a trip, and I felt like I was pretty clear when I came back that I needed to get into agriculture and more working with the earth. And forgiving my relationship to the earth, which I was always struggling with growing up in the suburbs. And just seeing, we grew up in the countryside, but it became the suburbs. And just seeing the suburbs swallow the oak trees and the savanna that I grew up in. I still carry that with me today. It's like a conflict of just seeing nature get destroyed so that we can be here.
So walking that 500-mile path was a pivotal experience. Can you share with us a pivotal person, teacher, mentor?
Yeah, I think,
leader.
For me, I've always, when I want to learn something, I try and find the source. I try and find the person who mastered it and who taught the other people. And then you realize there is no source. It's all just a lineage of people who are doing things.
Yes.
So that's what brought me to Ecology Action eventually, was trying to find the person who was the best at this form of agriculture, which is John Jevons. And I think meeting John is definitely one of the best teachers I've ever had. And he's a very generous person, very clear on the global situation, and very honest about it, and very hopeful despite all the challenges we face. And I just learned a lot about how to work with other people through knowing John, and how to relax a little bit more too, even though I'm working hard to find the peace in the work. And so yeah, John's definitely a mentor.
So given the array of challenges we face as a global humanity, and the list is extensive. I've seen your book, and I mean, we're looking at everything from pollution to climate shifts to abuse of our resources, to our polluted skies, to our misuse of resources and abuse of such, and certainly our unconsciousness towards nurturing the soil that is critical to our lives. What, and you might share with us a little bit more about what that means. Why is the soil such a big deal? We got so many other problems to deal with. What do we got to worry about the soil for?
It's dirt.
It's dirt.
Dirt everywhere. Yeah. Yeah. People are really starting to use the phrase now, like a perfect storm. And all these situations that come together that create this tremendous energy potential, which could be quite destructive, which is what a perfect storm is. The climatic, environmental situations are perfect, and this supercell just mows over the landscape.
Yeah, and I was also, as I was talking about the environmental toxins and challenges and abuses that we experience, that goes hand in hand with the aberration of human connection and communication. When you look at what's taking place nowadays in regards to the willingness of people in their own community to find a way to forge a path for all, for the highest good of all concerned. It just seems that there's so many walls and barriers that people have defined that keep them from living a much more productive and uplifting life by working with others and working through the differences.
Yeah, and I think that's the root of the opportunity and the challenge is this perfect storm that's happening. Like, it could tear us apart as a community.
Yes.
Or it could also bring us together. And that's the way this dynamic energy of all these challenges happening at once, and more people every day to deal with those challenges. That's where it can actually bring us together. And I really view it as the birthing of a new paradigm. It has to be. And if it isn't, then we're in trouble. But there's also a lot of division that happens when a new paradigm comes around. And so that's where this connection with this community and each other and connecting to the earth and feeling and finding the connection is going to be what holds it all together.
Oh, so what you're intimating is that, and you are actually applying, is that our developing an intimate connection with the earth and with Mother Nature that sustains us inherently helps us develop intimate connections with other people, and then we all rise.
Yeah, and the soil is such an important part of that. Like, we all come from the soil, we all return to the soil. Our food comes from the soil. Even if you grow it in a warehouse, the minerals that get brought in to grow the food in the warehouse come from the soil. And so, there's this amazing opportunity to get back to what we've always been doing, which is localizing, being wonderful communities of people working together, taking care of their planet, taking care of their soil, letting nature do its work. And one of the things nature does is it cleans things, and it grows things and nurtures things. And there's this life force that just renews things. And a lot of the challenges that we've created, if we just allow ourselves to connect to that energy that is renewing and sustaining, we can see that we might not be working against so many things. We might find that we're supported through a living universe in the work we do, rather than feeling like the whole world is coming down on us and all these problems are happening and I don't know what to do. It's like, there's so much work to do. Pick up a shovel. Come on, let's go plant some fava beans in the soil and heal the soil.
So let me ask this question. If that's fine and dandy on the Mendocino coast, there's seemingly plenty of room for the number of people that live or visit here. How do we do that in the city?
Yeah, and that's where, in particular, the biointensive approach that we've developed at Ecology Action, which is really just a very old-fashioned way of growing things based on some best practices, where that becomes a really powerful tool because it allows us to micro-scale agriculture, which also means for folks who live in densely populated areas, it's kind of a best practices how to use your resources most wisely. So I think I don't know what's going to happen to our cities in the future. On one hand, I wonder if they're going to disperse a little bit, if they just require too much input to keep them going, or maybe we figure it out how to. Certainly, a lot of people love living in the city and don't want to leave. And there's wonderful things about the city. So, if there is to be a local food effort in the city, it kind of has to be biologically intensive with biointensive method, because the average dietary footprint is about an acre. So if you get 1 million people together.
So my dietary footprint, if I'm not being conscious, is in terms of my sourcing of food and the type of food I eat, is utilizing an acre of land and soil to sustain myself. And then you multiply that times the number of people in cities, the number of people in a state, the number of people in a country, in the world. It's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, the Bay Area. I don't even, how many people live in the Bay Area?
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably 1 million, I don't know.
Oh, more than that.
More than that. So
there's 4 million in LA.
Yeah, so 4 million times 4 million acres.
Yeah.
16 million acres you need. And what you find out is when you hear statistics like the UN saying we only have 50-something years of soil left, you get to understand why. It's because we have too many people using resources poorly, creating an entire society that's unsustainable, and we're destroying our soil. And we don't understand the potential that we have to actually grow soil. And we know that for every pound of food that is eaten in the grocery store in LA, if it's organic, there's like 6 pounds of food lost. And if it's non-organic and it's grown in China, it's about 20 pounds of food lost. And if it's not organic and it's grown in the Central Valley, it's somewhere between 21 and 24 pounds of food loss, of soil loss per pound of food you eat.
Oh, this is all soil loss. Okay.
Soil loss per pound of food that you eat. So you eat a pound of broccoli, and you've lost 20 pounds of soil. It's crazy. And it's because of
our unconscious approach to the nurturing of the soil that's critical for us to have that broccoli.
And we have this industrialism mentality, which you see going back to like a lot of things. When industrialism hits a community, you see the artisans and the craftspeople responding and being like, don't you understand this? Yes, we're not as efficient in terms of like cranking out as many units per person because we're using robots now. But can't you feel the soul in the work? Doesn't the food taste better? Doesn't the flour smell better when it's raised by someone who cares and who loves the soil and loves their plants? And when you see an industrialized farm, you just see this mechanical destruction of the soil. But when you see it done by hand, carefully with love, you see a soil that produces for thousands of years. And so we see that all over the world. Evidences of cultures that grew soil on the same piece of land, or grew food on the same piece of land and grew their soil on that land for 4,000 years before they adopted industrial methods. And now they've got a couple dozen years of soil left. And when you actually look at the fine print of that UN figure, it says at the current rates of soil depletion, we have about 55 or 54 years of soil left. But what we know is when you cut the forest down, and you cut more and more and more and more of it away, and all you're left with is this little piece. I saw this growing up. Those big trees in the middle of the forest that were once in the middle of the forest, now they're on the edges and they just fall over. And you see disease and beetles and things step in, and they're not bad. They're just there cleaning up a mess. They're trying to balance the situation. You see invasive species come in, they're trying to balance the situation. But you see the loss of productivity and health of that forest. And so we're going to see that the soil is an ecosystem. It's actually going to be an increased rate of loss. So the UN's number is actually less remaining years of soil left than we think we have.
And with sustainable nurturing of the soil and the growth of our food stuff, we can actually grow soil, can we not?
Yeah, so with these methods, we can, for every pound of food we eat, we can grow 20 pounds of soil. And we produce...
That's a whole different paradigm.
Yeah.
That's a paradigm shift.
It's a paradigm shift, and that's what this is all about, is that we don't need to go off the cliff.
Yeah.
We don't need to run off this cliff and look like Wile E. Coyote runs off the cliff and doesn't even realize he's off the cliff, and then he looks down, and then he falls.
Yeah.
That's kind of where we're headed. We're kind of already off the cliff. We just don't want to look down yet. But, we could actually, we could get to the edge of that cliff and look down and see this beautiful green fertile valley with families playing together and communities healthy and happy, and a wonderful, beautiful environment with a clean river going through there, and in just simple, wonderful life. We could see that at the bottom of this valley, and we could help each other down and descend into this better way of life. And we don't have to all go careening off the cliff and hope that a few of us make it. We could actually help each other down. The solution is so simple and elegant and beautiful, and it's so life-affirming and life-enriching to have a backyard garden and experience that connection to life. What you said, where you're nurturing that which nurtures you, feeling that completeness, and feeling like you're participating in a creative process, rather than just being lost as a parasitic, destructive organism.
Oh yes, well,
on a biosphere.
Yes.
There's just so much that paradigm shift changes everything, and so that's where this perfect storm gets transformed into. Maybe this is exactly what humanity needs to be going through at this time.
Well, there's a long-lived saying: crisis breeds opportunity. We just have to wake up.
Yeah.
As human beings, what do you see as our most formidable traits we can employ in stepping forward with care, with vision, with conscious intention? What were we born with that we can draw on, that helps, that is an amazing expression of societies, of human beings' success in surviving through all the various traumas that it's created and experienced?
Yeah, I think there's that kind of invisible force that burns like a fire inside of us. That's our passion, and it's our sensitivity to sense what's going on around us, and the ability to kind of meditate on it and think about it for a minute, and call up our experience and say, what's our best options at this point? How do we move forward in a way that no one's left behind, and that we're not stepping on each other to move forward? So I think there's something about humanity. We all have this spirit that we can engage with, that allows us to see a good outcome.
Yes.
To have the volition and will to go towards that.
Yes.
And to maybe just like let go of some things that no longer serve us.
Yes.
And so, when I think about that with agriculture, it's like, well, let's just there's a wonderful quote by Buckminster Fuller that's, you don't change things by fighting the existing reality. You create a new reality that makes the old paradigm obsolete. And so, we don't have to fight all the things that we disagree with. We can actually envision the thing that we see in the future as our positive outcome and start moving towards it. And it takes probably a lot of commitment, and it takes some stress. And in that process of going towards that, there's probably a lot to learn that makes us better people. And I think that in a long way answers your question of, like, there's something about that process of engaging the human spirit and working towards a better future that humanity's always had, and has brought out the best of us in the most challenging times.
So what I'm hearing you say is that all challenges, of which we create quite a few of them, are integral to growing us as whole, productive, aspiring human beings.
Yeah. And I think, like, there's some people out there who are going through some real challenges right now. Like, there's people who are displaced, who are in war.
Yes.
And it's hard for me to say, like, I feel like those people are going through a challenge and they need this in order to grow as a human. So I think for me personally, like, I stop short at that, and sometimes also realize that, like, I'm partly responsible for what's going on with, this family that's barely making it in some part of the world. It's maybe my consumerism that's responsible for the loss of that forest that displaces these people and forces them to move into Mexico City and be unemployed and barely making it. So I don't know if I think there's total truth in what you're saying, that we have to look at these challenges as these are growth. And I think also part of that is just making sure everyone has an equal opportunity
Yes.
to grow in a way that is conducive towards peace and happiness.
Yes.
And just maybe lifting our foot off of the necks of other people around the world.
Becoming
because-
conscious of the fact
Yeah.
that we're not stepping with sensitivity.
Yeah. Like the average
And-
carbon footprint of an
Yeah.
American is like almost 700 times that of someone of Burundi.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the
Burundi
people,
being country in Africa,
yeah,
right?
but it's just,
Yeah.
very simple,
Yeah.
low-tech
Wow.
society,
Yeah.
not a consumer-based society. But you see, when you think about how our everyday actions really do affect the butterfly effect on the
Yes.
other side of the
Yes.
world, right? These little decisions we can make in our lifestyle actually really help other people. So I think a lot of the people that you hear, like, who are on the front lines of climate change, who are requesting that, like, Western countries who are consumers are paying taxes to help fix the problems that were created on the other side of the planet by our consumerism.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's the right thing to do or not, but certainly one of the things that we all can do is to be more conscious and to, like, make these changes in our lives that bring about a sense of wholeness, of not having to fill the void with all these things that we buy, but finding the joy in love and simplicity, and having friends in your community and working together to make
Yeah.
a better community.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a daily work. Living life in a conscious, aspiring manner is a daily discipline. And you bring up a good point that as challenges may be our lessons, when we're in the middle of them,
You might not feel that great.
it doesn't feel so good. And we don't know what is the lesson. All we know is we got to survive. And yet we are here today because you and I have both been willing to move through those challenges to claim life at a more productive, more sustainable level.
Yeah.
If you could rule the world, Matt, for a day, just a day, and the world chose to be open to your enlightened command, what would you propose and exercise?
An early retirement for me, to not rule the world anymore. Gosh, I don't know. I don't think I would ever want to rule the world. I would propose that we break off into small groups and get together as councils and figure out, address the challenges that are existing in our communities all over the place. Figure out who has what, who can help where, and then we work together to make sure everyone's all right. And that isn't a top-down decision, but that becomes a way of getting everyone involved in this transformation.
An initiation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And without having, one of the beautiful things about this biointensive method of gardening is it allows everyone to feel that empowering feeling of, like, oh, I can take care of myself, and I can do that in a way that also takes care of nature. And then I now see myself as part of a whole ecosystem that's taking care of itself, and I feel my place in that. And it helps you, it actually makes people happy. There's studies that show that people are, PTSD is relieved, people are more happy, the cognitive abilities of people increase when there's school gardens. And so I think the beauty of that is that it's a direct action that we can all take that allows us to feel engaged in the transformation towards a better future. And so if I were the ruler, I would try and figure out how to get everyone engaged in that and have them feel like they're stakeholders.
Yes.
Rather than just subject to it.
Thank you. So how do you personally muster the hope, enthusiasm, conscious, productive attitude and action you apply each day? You have your moments, there's no question. Overall, though, you exude a positivity and embrace a zest for life. So what is it how do you personally reawaken your attunement each day?
Well, I think I found something I feel like I can do that makes me feel like I have a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that helps. I think where I feel like I have something to offer, and I can show up and like we have a free seed bank, and so nothing else is going on. Maybe I just go into town and give away free seeds.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes me feel like I like surrounding myself with things that I can offer.
Mm-hmm.
So
Do you have a morning practice or ritual that
I want
that's
to.
integral to your life? Huh?
Yeah, I really want. I want to get up and do some yoga and get into some things where I'm greeting the day a little bit more than I do. I have a 18-month-old daughter, and it's wonderful. So I'm woken up every morning with just screams of joy.
Yes.
And
That's an active meditation.
That's a
You're
different
calling on your attention immediately.
Yeah, I need a bottle. So yeah, I don't need. I might need a bottle at that point myself. I don't know, but no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, it's yeah. My priorities have all changed, and everything has changed having a child. So yeah, my routine right now is getting up and taking care of her. And I actually sometimes I wake up and I'm like, oh gosh, there's a lot of work I have to do at 6 in the morning until 8 a.m. because my partner's out the door real early, and I gotta feed her and I gotta take care of her. And sometimes it's like, all right, let's get out of bed, and then as soon as I see her, it's easy.
Yeah? Oh, wonderful.
Well, it's easy to let go of any
Yeah.
feeling of burden. I feel like this is what I need to do.
She's responsible. She helps you support you to be present in the present,
Yeah.
and release all the other to-dos and have-tos and got-tos.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
If I don't take care of her, then what's the point of anything else?
So you have an 18-year-old daughter. You have a partner.
18 months.
Oh, 18 months.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah, not so fast. He's got lots more steps to go through. And you have a partner, and that the three of you make up your household.
Yep. And 2 dogs.
And 2 dogs. So is home base a integral part of your life to assure balance and wholeness?
Yeah, I would like it to be more than it is, because right now I work a lot, and home is pretty much where I rest. You asked me if I had read that book the other day, and I realized I haven't read it. I haven't been able to read a book in 2 years.
Yes.
I've been so busy trying to get things in order for having a daughter and taking care of my daughter, and then working full time. And then, granted, I love my work and I feel invigorated by it, but when I get home, it's like cook dinner, have a glass of wine, relax,
Say hello to your partner.
say hello, eat dinner together,
Yes.
watch something stupid that
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
deflate some stupid comedy thing or something that we can just laugh about.
Yes.
Let go. So I think, yeah, that's what home is for me right now. But eventually, I would love to see my home be where I also do my work. Have that, like if I had a small farm that I actually owned, and my home was on that farm, where there's a great old Greek book, pronounce it wrong, it's called like Oikonomia. It's like an essay written by this philosopher Xenophon, and he talks about the root of our word economy is the management of the household. And he tells these these parables about these people who are farmers, and it's their economy is how they manage their household and their farm. And I just think that's such a simple, where if all the sweat, equity, and love I was putting into this soil was also where I lived, I would feel like when I hand my home over, when I pass away, someone inherits that. My daughter inherits that, and maybe it can stay in the family.
Yes.
And each year the soil gets better, and the trees grow bigger, and the house is still
Yes.
there. So yeah, I would love to see home play more like a role in that, on that level for me.
So when you share your picture, to me it's a vision. And from my own experience, being a few years down the road than you, it's holding that vision regardless of whether you know how or not. It's that vision that is a magnet of its own accord if we just keep laying the pavers of the path to realizing it. And it's a journey, and yet the whole journey of life is continually an abundance of lessons, and just trust.
Yeah, there's
it will become.
Yeah, thank you. Have you seen the book The Sacred Tree?
No.
It's this beautiful, simple book. A bunch of Native American elders got together in the early 80s, late 70s from Canada and North America, and they said, our children are suffering. We need to bring the wisdom together. And so they made this book out of this conference that's called The Sacred Tree, and it embodies all these different traditions as like a whole vision. And one of their diagrams in there is this, the medicine wheel. And it shows the cross and the medicine wheel with the circle. And, you can look at that as the directions, as the four elements, as all these things. It's a beautiful heuristic device to understand nature and ourselves and our place in nature. And there's this beautiful version of that diagram that shows the four parts in that circle as the emotional, the mental, the physical, and the spiritual. And then on the next page is another diagram where it shows that two-dimensional medicine wheel. And then there's this spiral that goes out into the future from the center of that circle and that cross, spiraling through the center of that spiral is volition and will, vision at the end of that. And the teaching in that is if you balance your emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual self, and you set your direction, come from a good place, you'll be sucked in. And I think that's like a faith.
This is a community vision, a book.
Yeah, The Sacred Tree, and it's just it embodies different elements of Native American wisdom. A conference they put together to kind of rescue the wisdom of their elders.
So we can read.
Yeah,
this?
It's almost a kid's book.
Oh,
it's so simple and beautiful.
This.
Like
Yes.
you could read it. Like I can't wait to read it. About it, but yeah, it's a beautiful book, and adults can read it too. It's really nice. Yeah. So to me, when you say like the vision and trusting,
Yes.
that's what the image I see is.
Oh yeah.
Balancing all those things and going for it.
Good. Good.
Yeah.
Have you read a key book, and you just shared one, or beheld a striking piece of art, or engaged in a very uplifting, moving movie that made an impression on you?
Yeah, I have the Botticelli painting, the Primavera. If you've seen that, it's I don't have the original print, unfortunately, but I've got a beautiful reproduction of it, and that sits where my office is, and I get to see that. There's something about that painting.
So describe it to us, please.
Well, it's the whole Renaissance movement, when there was this rebirth, renaissance of culture and reorganizing the energies to rebuild Europe, a real crumbling and dispersion and dissolution of societies at that point. And they were really rescuing old visions and philosophies and things from the past. And so embodied in a lot of these paintings during the Renaissance and a lot of the architecture and art is teachings, ancient teachings, sacred teachings that go back to ancient Egypt and even before then, and Greece and India, and all these other things are embodied in a lot of these paintings in this Renaissance work. So the Primavera one I really love because you can look at it and you can see this, you can see tons of different things in there. But it has this kind of flowing movement of this individual whose name is Zephyr, I think. And then you see this woman in 3 stages. I don't know why I'm so emotional right now. Bring it out.
Thank you for
But yeah, it's
yourself.
a beautiful painting, yeah. And it's got the 3 graces in there.
The 3 graces.
Yeah, which is an old story, ancient Greek, probably predates that. And I forget what the 3 are right now.
Okay.
But they're wonderful aspects of the different type of Trinity. And you can almost look at it as like an alchemical thing too. And,
That are integral to being a whole realized being.
Yeah, and the beauty of this painting is it shows this evolution
Yes.
of of death into life.
Yes.
And there's Cupid up at the top.
Oh, yeah.
There's a Virgin Mary, who isn't called the Virgin Mary, but she represents the Virgin Mary.
Yes.
And she's wearing the blue robes and doing everything the Virgin Mary does. And there's a woman who goes through her life cycle, and then there's the three graces there, and then there's this Mercury character, this Hermes character who's spinning the clouds. And you just see in all of this progression of the seasons.
Mm-hmm.
You see the progression of a person, and then you see these different principles at play, which are part of nature. And then all these, there's this really interesting book called The Botanical Alchemy of the Primavera. I think it's something like that. It's from Italy. It was translated, but they go through and they look at all the individual wildflowers in there, and every single wildflower that's in there, they're all different. And then they give at the time, the lore behind each of those plants, and it's fascinating. Like there's an entire pharmacopoeia, and of plants in there that tells you so much about what they were using for medicine, and they're located at different types of plants are located at different parts of the painting. And so when I see that painting, I just feel like so enriched. And,
yes.
I just see something that's so full of, you can just stare at it for days.
Well, it seems like a real collection of so many of life's influences, and the depiction of the journey we are all on to realize the fullness of our heart, because Cupid's at the top.
Yeah, right.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I had no idea about that piece of art. So where might I see the besides your
You can go to Florence.
home?
I think it's in
Florence?
the Uffizi.
Okay.
I think it's either in there or probably the Louvre or something. It's definitely one of the more famous art museums. I think it's in Florence, because that was the heart of the Renaissance during that time. But yeah, you can find a copy of it. I bought one off the internet. But it's a beautiful painting. All of Botticelli's paintings are beautiful. The Venus, is a classic.
Yeah. So do you have a statement of inspiration or a word of wisdom which guides your life today?
Yeah, I'm thinking of quotes I use in my classes that I tell people that I remember, but I think just a personal vision is nurturing that which nurtures you. That's kind of sums up my work. I think it's a good golden rule to try and integrate with people too, realizing we're all helping each other. Maybe that's it.
Nurture that which nurtures you. Yeah.
Kind of keeps it coming back.
So what recommendation do you have for the youth of today to meet the inevitable changes, possibilities, and opportunities ahead of them?
Yeah, I think to maybe stay away from some of the more technology, binary, artificial reality, cyberspace, virtual reality stuff, and start doing community service. And we're doing some community garden projects, and I would love to get more kids involved in those.
You're doing a community garden project in Fort Bragg.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah.
That's an innovator, right?
It's like a new idea incubator. Yeah. Fort Bragg used to have a community garden, and they've got several gardens in Fort Bragg that are community oriented, but they didn't have anywhere for people who didn't have access to land and water resources to grow food, to actually have a plot. So there's in the Victory Gardens for Peace work that I do, we're trying to envision how we can rapidly bring about community-based food systems that are equitable, socially just, and inclusive and sustainable. And seeing a point in time, if there ever was a hiccup in our food system, we're going to need to rapidly make community garden projects everywhere, because people are going to have to eat.
Yes.
And it takes 3 months to get your first crop of potatoes in. So there's a challenge there.
Yes.
And potatoes is one of the fastest, quickest, best sources of calories that you can get. So We're trying to create these models where we can work with communities to rapidly increase food sovereignty, food security. And so Fort Bragg is the biggest population center near where I live. It's a very isolated community. It's subject to earthquakes, mudslides, bad rain, big rains, big windstorms, power outages, tsunamis, fires, everything. And it's very isolated, so it's very at-risk.
North of Mendocino.
Yeah, right on the coast. The roads inland are very treacherous when it's bad weather. So there's a lot of risk. It's a high-risk community for a lot of reasons. But we wanted to start community gardens there and then codify the whole thing in the process of it, so that other communities could follow a similar path of starting gardens. And so we created what's called the Garden Friendly Community Resolution, which any community can use. It's available at victorgardensforpeace.com. It's free, and we provide support in terms of communicating with you to help you do it. But it helps you organize your community or your school or your business, whoever you're working with, to free up resources so that people can have gardens and experience everything we've been talking about. And so we passed that on the city level at Fort Bragg in 2019. And they were so excited by it, they said, well, we want to give you land for the first community garden.
Yes.
So they gave us this prime spot in the middle of town, at this community center.
Yeah.
And we've been developing that and fundraising and making that happen. And it just opened up in October. And it's wonderful. I stopped by there this morning. There's people turning compost piles.
Oh, yeah. That's got to be heartwarming and
so
heartening, because you just... And it was a pretty... I remember you speaking about it a year ago, and you were kind of weren't you the lone flag bearer?
Someone's got to do
flag waver. And...
at one point, maybe, yeah.
And in speaking to the abundance of possibility you could see taking place in Fort Bragg, but it wasn't like you proposed the idea and boom, done, finished. You had to go through a bit of a gauntlet, right?
Yeah, and I think
move through the resistance that people inherently have for new approaches to life.
Yeah, and I think the approach that we chose to take, which I think is so wonderful about this resolution, is the first thing we did was honored everyone who's gardening in the community. The second thing we did was show how gardens make communities more peaceful, beautiful. They lower stress, they increase food security, they're good exercise, good health and nutrition. We made a case that how could you say no to a community garden?
Yeah.
I think making the case on that level of just showing that there's really nothing negative that comes out of a community garden. You're going to have some personality issues.
Yeah.
Someone stepped on someone's garden bed accidentally and now they're pissed, or someone harvested someone else's zucchini and you got to deal with that. But that's life. The approach we try and take is to just show how undeniably true and great and wonderful the idea is, and how could you say no? And when you're working with politicians, it's like, give them a chance to say yes to something positive.
Yeah.
They'll say yes, and then if they're going to say no to a community garden, that's like a bad mark on their resume. They're not going to get reelected.
You just had to go through the creative challenge of developing a picture that everyone could feel they could paint.
Yeah.
And that, well, I congratulate you.
Thanks.
So how do we move it from Fort Bragg to Sacramento to Petaluma to Sonoma to Idaho and so on and so forth?
That remains to be seen.
Yeah.
So we're still getting everything. We're getting this pilot. It's not really a pilot because we actually really care about the community and love being in the garden. So it's not just like we're going to try this out here and export it. But it's the route we've envisioned, that one way people can access this is maybe someone wants to start a community garden in Petaluma or Santa Rosa or wherever, in Thailand or wherever, and they don't know where to start. And so we can direct them to our website. They can see the resolution.
Okay.
The beautiful thing about that process of working with the politicians and all these people is you create an opportunity for people to become personally invested in your project. So that resolution is there, and it invites the community to be a part of
Mm-hmm.
what we're trying to create.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a toolkit, which is being finished now. It should be up by the end of the year, but it takes people step by step through the process of starting a garden.
Yes.
How do you fundraise? Do you want to start a nonprofit, or do you
Yeah.
just want to do it as an individual? If you're a nonprofit, you can accept donations, which makes it, you can
Yeah.
make the garden really nice, but then it's trade-offs, right? But you don't, the whole point of the toolkit is to show you all these different paths. And then we have the GFC Garden Funding Community Network that we're developing, so that as people start doing this, they can report back and then
Okay.
create new paths
Yeah.
and new ways to make
Yeah.
community gardens. And so the goal of the GFC work is really to facilitate other communities starting community-based food systems. And a big part of that is not just supporting your local farmer, but also creating the access to resources for people to experience growing their own food.
And you are perfect being a leader for that, because you have been integral to creating ecology action, agricultural awareness and practice around the world, have you not? Like, give us a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's people who I work with who are like, there's a guy, Juan Manuel, who's when we actually do the math and calculate how many people he's taught directly and indirectly,
Yes.
it's like over 1 million people.
Oh, wow. Well, wonderful.
Each one teach one
Yeah.
kind of thing, you know, and so you can actually trace the family tree of the people who are doing this work in Nicaragua or Kenya,
Yeah.
and realize like the impact that a lot of these people have had. John is, in one way, you can look at what John's done and say that indirectly and directly, 6 million people have learned from what John.
So what are some countries that are practicing what you are, that which you are exemplifying in your work today?
Yeah. So the route that we take with this work is to, instead of us going to a country and trying to convert people to a new way of growing food, we identify people and we invite people who love their community and love their ecosystem, love their forest, love their land, and have that vision of a positive future, whatever that may be. And we invite them to come up and learn, and then we help certify them as teachers if they want to go that route. And then, so what we've created is a decentralized network of teachers in over 150 countries.
150 countries, thank the Lord. Good. Deal.
There's been people who have practiced. Not everyone's up to date on certification, which is a lot to ask someone who's illiterate, who lives in some country way out in the world.
But yet they can understand the basics by being present to the practice.
And they are teaching people.
Yes. Wow. Beautiful.
So it's much better to have people, in my opinion, it's much better to have people from their own communities teaching and creating that sense of communal awareness and developing things together versus being the emissary
Yes.
traveling to tell people how I do things here.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple different countries where it's really exploded. And so there's like something almost like 200 certified teachers in Nicaragua, which is a small country.
Yes. And a country that has been fomented in or if that's the right word, in government and bureaucratic and societal disturbance for a number of years, and yet there's solidity and stability to be found in the farming that takes place based on community interaction. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and that's where we see the most people doing this work.
Yeah.
It's actually, the most people doing this work is not in the United States, unfortunately. Though we should try and get there. It's one of my goals. But the areas of the world where the most people are doing the biointensive agriculture is in some of the more difficult situations because it works.
Yeah.
And because you don't need a lot of resources and money to feed your family. And it allows you to spend less effort to get your food, which means you can focus on other things.
Yes.
Things that you need to take care of and your families. And so when things get tough, people tend to really start doing this stuff. But the cool thing about it is you can avoid the rush. You know, you don't have to wait till things get tough to do these things. Even when times are good, where people are doing this work, the results just increase the good.
Yeah.
You know, there's no net loss.
It's a compounding effect for the
positive.
As I like to say, the highest good of all concerned. If we could just keep practicing that attitude, we all benefit.
Yeah.
So, to complete this most wondrous conversation, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm always
great.
enlightened
Yeah.
in connecting with you, and I just appreciate the brightness of energy, the warmth of heart, just the exuberance of focus that you apply to life to support us all in developing a closer connection with our Mother Earth and nature. So, for what are you most grateful given this life privilege that you have? Because we're here today, gone tomorrow. What are you most grateful for?
Well, I think I'm most grateful for the forgiveness of the earth
Mm-hmm.
to just take all of the things that we put on it and continue to sustain us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that whatever that vital force is that comes through us too, I'm grateful for that vital force that is friendship
Mm-hmm.
and building soil and growing plants, enjoying life. So yeah, grateful for that vital force that's in everything.
So when you just in your sharing of this, what moves you? What touches you?
Trying to get me to
'Cause
sob in front of everybody.
You touch me too, man. and I find that when the heart's open, possibilities are boundless in regards to how we live our life, how we connect with each other, how we move forward, and we make a difference. So it's so love yourself for being able, for knowing that your heart is right here to touch, move, and inspire.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's always wonderful to talk with you, because whether you're asking me a question or you're commenting on something I'm rambling about, or I ask you a question and you respond, it's always full of just really good intention to help us remember the higher self and all this stuff. So
yes,
it's just like every time I see you, I want to give you a big hug and say hi, and grateful for your friendship. So thank you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. And thank you, dear audience. Thanks for your presence. Thanks for your attunement. Thanks for your openness. We are complete with this wondrous interview. In light, in love,